You clicked on the video, and I know why. You love role-playing games. As a matter of fact, you probably play Dungeons and Dragons. You would love it if game sessions could last forever, but you don't love combat sequences that seem to. You seek momentous memories, and I want to bring about role-playing revolution. Let me reveal the secrets to fun and fantasy and raise your games beyond the ampersand. I'm Jonathan Albin, the Games Master. Welcome to Nikos. Let's go.
Absorbing damage is the name of the game.
I'm Jonathan Albin, the host of Game Master Soapbox, and today we are going to talk about how to run great games every time. One of the biggest challenges in being a game master for as long as I have is that you have players that come to the game sessions and sometimes they're great and sometimes they're not so great. But if you want to run great games every time, I'm going to give you 7 tips here that are going to help to make your games work out much better. And they also are going to be things that are going to help your ability to make every session consistently enjoyable. So the first thing we want to look at is we're going to look at the way you establish the shot. When you're starting a new episode or a new session, it's best to give a clear understanding of where the party has been, what they're doing right at this moment, and you want to provide compelling narration that matches with the theme and the concept that you're trying to get across. If you are clear on the establishing shot, then the ability for the players to act becomes more clear because they have very strong footing on what's going on. This will give them, therefore, an opportunity to act appropriately, give you the right information back so that the turns can go relatively quickly. Don't say that 3 times fast. That relatively quickly. It's a good, I don't know, good workout words there. So you want to make sure you've got clear decision points for the players to act upon so that they know when they are to make their decisions and what kind of options they have available. If you've made a clear call to action, you've given them a set of variables in the scene and then you're asking for their input. Pretty easy. But you want to make sure when you do that, you give them room to improvise. A player ultimately wants to be able to have agency in their storytelling. They want to make sure that what they have as their actions are fulfilled in the scene, and the best way to do that is to be open-ended in your questions and then activate dedicated listening. When I speak of dedicated listening, what I'm referring to is that you want to make sure that you keep the scene and the session intense, in that you want to stay in whatever theme and concept you're in throughout. So when you've provided the information and now you're waiting for their input, be ready to hear it, listen through it, and be able to respond. This means you need to understand player agency. A player's choice in what they want to do sometimes is completely ambiguous and you really don't know. So it's important to make sure you hear what they're saying and understand not only what they said in terms of the words, but you hear what they mean. Because when a player gives you that information, when they are telling you their actions, they're actually setting up the next scene already with some idea of expectation. And so you want to make sure that you're able to pick that up as they are giving their description, so that way you can respond appropriately. Now, this will lead to more efficient sequencing if the order in which you ask the questions associates the position in time that this is going on with other things. So if you have a group of players that are going to act, you want to determine how you're going to make the scene make sense. And the easiest way to do that is to have the players make decisions in the order that would be anticipated for the scene to continue. What that means is the person who is in the most dynamic portion of the scene has to make their choices first. If they give you an action that would take them out of that sequence, then you can simply stack them back in and say, okay, what you're asking for will happen, but it's going to happen at a later point in the turn. I'm going to go ahead and move on, and therefore you're able to guide the sequencing of the turn so that it's not difficult to understand where you are or to understand what other options are going on around you. When you're giving them the room to improvise, realize that they have virtually an infinite number of choices they can make, and so it's really important to listen to their answers to the open-ended questions, and if you need to, clarify as well, so that there's no confusion on either side. And it's therefore leads back to dedicated listening, and then more importantly, hearing what they mean, so that you capture their agency, what they are intending to do in the game, while keeping the scene intense. And therefore, you're able to guide the sequencing of the turn so that it's not difficult to understand where you are, or to understand what other options are going on around you. This gives the players, again, that confidence level. They know what the scene is and what their role is in it. And all of this really comes down to making sure that you're able to be playful too. You need to engage in the game. You need to, because you're hearing so intently and you're gathering information, sometimes it's possible to kind of bring your own game down by being too serious about it. So realize that this needs to be a playful experience, and so be willing to be playful in your experience, both on the speaking side when you're giving the information, you're able to enjoy it when the players are giving their information. So have it be a two-way communication and an ongoing process. Therefore, the game feels more enjoyable and the players want to be a part of it. If you do these things, every game session you run will be great. Now, this does lead to three primary points. You need to, at any point during the game session, if there's any confusion, whatever, feel free to stop the action, clarify any confusion, figure out what it is that's being confusing, and fix it, because that way the flow will continue from that point on. Now, it's really important to understand requires player communication. So if a player is not understanding, they need to feel confident enough that they can ask additional clarifying questions. So make sure that you're open to that response and that you're not snapping because you have an idea already in your head. So be a lot more open than you might otherwise be. But when you do this, when you allow for player communication, you're going to be able to get that feedback going, get to the questions quicker, resolve any conflicts, and be able to get back to the game.
I live in dungeons, always did. I live in dungeons.